I think the latest Concord gameplay looks worse, and I do not think this game has what it takes to go the distance, but that may not be their goal with this game, and I'll explain what I mean. But rather than just being negative for the sake of being negative, I would like to offer critique and feedback that might be helpful, because look, for a variety of reasons, the game's initial showing did not go over very well. Some were critical of the cinematic. They said it felt too much like a grab at the Marvel movie humor, and it sort of felt like a cheap Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, while others focused primarily on the gameplay, asking the million-dollar question, why another hero shooter? I, for one, had no issues with the cinematic, and I thought it was done rather well, but in my video, I called this game a big risk. That's on the channel if you want to see my initial response to this, and I pointed out the amount of similarities to Destiny, in addition to just questioning the longevity of a game that's centering itself around being just a 5v5 arena hero shooter. And the latest round of gameplay, comes to us thanks to previews, and while the previews are largely positive, I actually saw elements in the gameplay that looked arguably bad. More than that, the animations and movements taken directly from Destiny really hurts this game's authenticity, in my opinion. But I also want to discuss the UI and the elements of gameplay that just don't look very appealing. And while I may not be the intended audience for a game like this, given my current disinterest in PvP, I've been playing PvP shooters since they were invented, and it's very easy to see when something will find a broad audience or get an audience excited. I remember playing Fortnite Battle Royale. I was in the game for maybe 20 minutes and I could just tell it was going to be a hit. I remember the Apex Legends announcement trailer, and about halfway through the trailer I said, I actually think they have something special here. And the more I see of Concord, the more convinced I am that this game will not have longevity, which is very different than saying that it doesn't look fun, because I actually do think it looks like a fun time, especially if you embrace the team play aspect and maybe you find some of the heroes to be really enjoyable. But being fun isn't enough, and while their story focus with weekly cinematics is certainly a new concept for a PvP game, I don't think it will be enough to carry an audience the distance required for a live service PvP game. Now, every weekday here on Reforge Gaming, I tell you what I think about a given topic in the gaming world, and then we go to a live stream where I want to hear what you think. So, if you want more content like this, hit like and subscribe. And before we talk about why I don't think the game will last, I want to talk about the new gameplay footage. Now, the first thing I noticed in the latest gameplay is the HUD, or heads-up display. And you'd be like, why would you talk about the HUD? Who cares about that? Well, maybe you don't like the way it looks either, and I'm going to try to put it into words, okay? This isn't being nitpicky. I actually think this is very important in a game like this. And I feel really bad for teams that work on things like a heads-up display. They're sort of like the sound design team. You only really get noticed if you did a bad job. The better the sound design or the better the UI, nobody really seems to notice you because you're just sort of supposed to be in the background. And it's not just about how much screen capital is taken up by the HUD. There's a science behind what seems to be completely rejected by the team working on Concord. And there are multiple things to show. First, let's talk about font choice. Yes, thrilling, right? Font choice. Somebody might say, you're just being nitpicky, but font choice is a huge turnoff in games if it makes it difficult to read the information quickly. I played a game recently with my wife, and it was like almost blurry because they chose a very similar font that's being used in Concord. It looks sort of like calculator numbers, and the numbers end up looking cluttered. They have to use extra lines like a slash through a zero, or 5s and 2s. You have to use like extra lines to get like a curve, and it just doesn't look very pleasing. It's not like they chose a font that is cool looking, which then is hard to read. It's just unpleasant. It doesn't deliver the information in a very clear way. In games like this, you may want to check the in-game timer, or maybe as you're fighting somebody, you want to check their health count. With the current font choice and how they display the health, it just looks muddy. It looks bad. I can't see highly competitive players liking the current choice of font, as it may lead to double takes on somebody's health, which that can be the difference between winning and losing a fight. It can adjust what you're going to do in response. If you know they're a one tap, if you know they're, maybe they need a grenade to kill them, you're going to make those choices in those milliseconds of reading the screen. And if it's difficult to read the font, that's going to affect people's enjoyment of the game. Now let's talk about the bottom left corner. It honestly looks like something that I would see in a throwaway mobile game, which maybe that's the goal. Maybe they want to bring this to mobile someday, but I would never design your HUD or your UI around mobile if you're not actually playing on a mobile device. You're going to be playing this on a TV or a monitor. And again, it's not just about how large the HUD can be. Games like Apex Legends and Valorant use very similar amounts of screen space, but they do a much better job of being subtle and understated. It's only there for quick glances, and right now it uses big blocky elements and just far too much color. And if you combine that with the awful font choice, it just looks very displeasing to the eye. Lastly, before we talk about the actual gameplay, let's talk about the top of the HUD. I actually think the character icons are fine. Tracking the round wins is fine. I think the timer would be perfectly fine if they would get rid of the calculator font. My only issue here is the radar. They once again seem to make things just sort of too big and blocky. The red and the blue arrows are so big they don't seem to give good information. Someone could be right around the corner or right on the corner itself, and it would be difficult to tell their location. The radar circle also seems a bit small, leading to it sort of having a zoomed in feel, and it looks a bit cramped. And while this all may seem like minor quibbles, an irksome or an unpleasant HUD can be a quick route to somebody just not wanting to spend time in your game, which leads to what I want to talk about next. What about the gameplay? My problems with the gameplay can be broken into two categories. Number one, it's too much like Destiny, and number two, there's nothing new here. So let's talk about Destiny. Maybe I'm biased and maybe I've just played and watched way too much Destiny over the years, but some of these maps literally look like maps that I have played on before. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because map design in Destiny has been mostly good throughout its life, but it really works against the game feeling unique or having its own identity. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe looking like a hero shooter mod in Destiny maps will appeal to a lot of people, but Destiny's PvP has never really been highly praised or even largely liked outside of the core Destiny community, which maybe being set free from a PvE game will help, but the issue is bigger than just map design. Numerous movement animations aren't even trying to look different from Destiny, which I find odd. Are they trying to signal something here with these rolls, these dashes, these dodges? Are they saying, hey Destiny fans, we have very similar player movement and agility? Even the gunplay has elements that feel very familiar. At one point, players are sort of huddled in a shielded dome, much like what you've seen in Destiny, and there's a very quick close quarters altercation that's punctuated by a snappy melee after firing a few close quarters hand cannon shots, and it just looks like Destiny, which, listen, I think this undercuts the second category of what I want to talk about. There's nothing new here. I'm just not seeing anything new or innovative in the gameplay. Some of the encounters look awkward, and the long time to kill makes some of the shootouts feel clumsy and drawn out, which obviously in a game like this, you can't have people dying in very, very short TTK like in like a Call of Duty, but it feels like a blending of two worlds that should never meet. Somewhat claustrophobic maps with tight lanes and corners, snappy gunplay, and players that take a significant amount of time to kill, which could lead to good gameplay or just a lot of team shotting. One of the previews even pointed out that this game isn't really designed for playing by yourself. You're just going to lose a lot of 2v1s if you do that, which that may grate against the preferences of the Destiny crowd if this game is trying to appeal to them. Long gone are the hero moments and those exciting 1v1s when everyone feels like a death bawling through the map strategy is the best strategy. This was something that was largely complained about in Destiny 2, which led to a lot of changes because players felt there was no skill expression. They were always fighting a mass of bodies and getting team shot into oblivion. So if a lot of those players come over to Concord and find that the team shot meta is alive and well, they may not find that very appealing, which obviously is an expectation you should expect in a 5v5 hero shooter, but the palette of the PvP crowds have changed a lot over the years, which leads to my last and most important question: will this game last? The first and biggest question I have about Concord's longevity is, why the focus on story? It feels completely juxtaposed against what most PvP fans are looking for. They're not looking for cinematics or story or ways to connect with the characters. They just want to jump in, play some games, and that's pretty much it. So much over the years, you even heard people say that, hey, Call of Duty doesn't really need a campaign. The PvP fans always said, stop wasting time. Now, they only did that once, but mainly you can see that I think there are people who just completely skip the campaigns and all they care is about PvP. So having a new cinematic every single week seems wasteful, and it also just sort of seems ambitious. Dedicating that amount of time and resources to having roughly 50 cinematics just for your first year, that's a tall order, and it's one that maybe your target audience might not even care about. Beyond that, there's two ways that I want to talk about how the market is saturated. I want to talk about how it's saturated now, but I also want to talk about how the market's going to be saturated in the future. Now, when it comes to the market right now, there is a plethora of options available for those who want to play PvP games. Enormous titles like Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone soak up massive amounts of your potential player pool, and then you have Apex Legends, PUBG, Overwatch, Valorant, CSGO. Not only are all these titles boasting of very consistent player bases, and they're all fairly large in size, they also have the same thing in common. They are free to play. So at present, the market is insanely saturated with not just colossal sized PvP games like Fortnite and Warzone. Every single one of these mainline games available right now, they are completely free. And this is a huge aspect of what makes a PvP game successful. Filling the funnel with as many players as possible, it increases the odds of finding fans of your game. And that's just the saturated market right now. Let's talk about the saturation in the future. While there are obvious differences between the games, two other hero shooters are headed to console, and their betas and their release timing are both around the same time as Concord. The first is Marvel Rivals, and right now, if you just compare the Marvel Rivals gameplay footage to what we've seen from Concord, even as a non-PvP guy, I find the Rivals footage to be more appealing. The art style looks more distinct, the characters look fun, and the gameplay has a snappy responsiveness to it. It seems like there's a good amount of just nice tight aim assist to make it an enjoyable experience. I especially liked the Rocket Raccoon gameplay that I saw. I'm like, I would actually like to play that. And Marvel Rivals will be free, and it has the broad appeal of characters like Spider-Man and Iron Man and Hulk. And yes, they are different approaches to the genre of hero shooter, but I cannot imagine that they appeal to vastly different player pools. The type of player who enjoys a 5v5 or a 6v6 arena hero gameplay style game, they're definitely going to be playing these games and comparing. And one game is free, and it will almost automatically be more popular due to the cast of heroes being Marvel-based. Then, for the more serious PvP gamers, will likely find themselves being drawn to Valorant. Now, while there is some valid concern about how incredibly, the tight gunplay and the fast time to kill, how's that going to feel on the console? It's just another free-to-play hero shooter that's going to be soaking up a portion of the potential player pool, which really is the main dilemma I see for games like this and having staying power. They are charging $40 for Concord, which is a huge hurdle when you're being compared to the price tag of free, and they have very direct competition in the hero market, both right now in a game like Apex Legends or even Valorant or Overwatch, but then you have games coming to console around the exact same time, and you're going to be trying to convince folks to buy your PvP only game. If you remember when Helldivers 2 launched, the team made it very clear they were not anticipating the amount of players who were interested in their game. They underestimated their launch numbers so much that they didn't even have a proper queuing system built for those early weeks, and which this could be what PlayStation is going for with their live service offerings. Smaller teams and smaller games like Helldivers 2, Concord, and even Marathon from Bungie. All of this could be aiming at smaller engagement aspirations, with the primary goal to break even, make your money back, last for 1 to 2 years, and then you could utilize all of the data, all of that learned knowledge from player behavior, spending habits, and the like, and that could help PlayStation's live service overall strategy. But for now, I will say that my interest level for this game went down, and it's honestly only being maintained due to the similarities with with Destiny. And it's more of me just being curious, is it going to feel like Destiny? It's not actual interest in playing the game. And based on everything I outlined in this video, I do not think this game has the legs to carry it far in the future. But those are just my thoughts, and now it's time to hear your thoughts. And you can do that in a comment below, or there's a live stream that will follow this video. We also have it hit the card here. It will also be in a pinned comment below. And if you like this content and you want more like it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.